Hey buddy, it's Carmen. And just below us here, out of view, the director, who is back after a little while as well. Yeah, back on Wednesday late afternoon. Wanted to come on and share some things I've been revisiting, as it's been a little while. Listening to all kinds of things as ever, but the last week and a half or 2 weeks have been really focusing on a single label, one I've been into for a long time, and I don't know, I'm not quite sure what sparked this, but I'm listening to as much as I can and finding everything I can in my own collection, as well as looking for some new things, kind of filling it up a little. And it's Mood Records. German label, started I think around 1976 or 77 by Wolfgang Donner, Albert Mangelsdorf, and Volker Kriegel, and possibly a couple others, to basically to showcase their group, United Jazz and Rock Ensemble. Just playing in the background to the extent that you could hear it. Basically an international group of musicians that I think would do an album, if not every year, maybe every couple of years for quite a while, from say the mid 70s, well into the 90s, maybe even a little beyond. But they had musicians from Germany, England, America, just all over, various parts of Europe. Yeah, Wolfgang Donner. Here's Wolfgang Donner here. Eberhard Weber, who I've been a long-time fan of, also part of the group. Now, I'd learned of them and the label in general back in high school. There was at the local library, it was kind of a really neat sort of coffee table size book, a jazz encyclopedia. Really nice profiles of different artists and groups, and they had one of Eberhard, but also one of Wolfgang Donner. And in I think it was Wolfgang Donner's profile, they had him and Eberhard pictured together, and mentioned the United Jazz and Rock Ensemble. And even seeing the insignia of the label was just really, I found it really intriguing, coming across that, and wanted to eventually seek out more on the label. Though it took some years because it was a little bit harder to come by than others that I was into. Okay. Making up for lost time here. What do you see? Oh, it's the cable that's attached to the camera. Got it plugged in. The battery was low. But yeah, I really look forward to finally getting into this label. And I think around 95 or so, finally came across an album. Actually, it was on CD, but this is an appropriate enough introduction. Wolfgang Donner, solo piano, from 1983, I believe. Yeah, I first heard this on CD, and I do distinctly remember picking it up during the fall and playing it all during, it was probably right around now. It was early November. Cool sunny days. It just always brought up that around this time of year I naturally want to hear him anyway, but it's probably what prompted me getting further into revisiting the label. But this is absolutely gorgeous. Even though he's pictured with Oberheim there, this particular one is just solo piano. He did a really nice one called Changes from a few years earlier than this, which was a mixture of piano and synthesizer of the time. But this is really nice. If you know his style, he's a very distinctive touch. His phrasing and his pacing are very much his own. And on here, it sounds to me that it might be a little bit of overdubbing, not necessarily like two pianos, but maybe like a third hand every now and then, for like some kind of harmonic figure, or maybe something rhythmic. But it doesn't detract in any way. Yeah, just beautiful, flowing, lyrical, but also great sense of pacing, and really a perfect mix of, in a different way than someone like Bill Evans, a mixture of jazz and classical. Seems to meld the two wonderfully without ever sounding like there is an awkward break between the two. Really showing that so much music is connected anyway, you know, however, whatever its origins or styles or approaches. But you know, he makes it flow seamlessly. And yeah, would definitely recommend, you know, if you want to get into him or, you know, the label in general, definitely a good place to start. So, again, a very individual approach. Solo piano, Wolfgang Donner, from 1983, I believe. And next up here, this is a little more recent find, but I've been familiar with some of the musicians for a while. And this is a pretty early one. This might be one of the earliest ones in the label. Voices. It's a collaboration here between Heinz Sauer and Winterkronborg on saxophones. Dieter Peterite on electric and acoustic bass, Bob Deegan piano, and Ralph R. Hubner on drums. Well, I'd learned of quite some years ago from one of Eberhard Weber's first albums, or I think it was his first ECM album, Colors of Chloe. He played drums on that, and played with Manfred Schoof. Wonderful stuff here. It starts off sounding like it's going to be very free-form and maybe more avant-garde, maybe even avant-garde classical in a way. Like the piano comes in almost like a little bit kind of like John Cage or Stockhausen or someone, but it actually ends up being very, you know, more composed and lyrical, with a lot of the improvisation and the soloing between the two saxophonists, who have very distinctive styles and approaches. Heinz Sauer is playing mostly tenor, it sounds, and he has more of a harder-edged, kind of a thicker tone, maybe even somewhere, you know, John Coltrane, Pharoah Sanders area, whereas Gunter has more of kind of a piercing, biting quality, you know, playing mostly alto. It's really fascinating hearing them kind of go back and forth, and it sounds like they compose a couple pieces for each other to solo off of, which is really, you know, kind of a neat thing. And the bass player, you know, going between electric and acoustic, his electric sound is really neat on here, blending interestingly with just the way the music is laid out. It has almost kind of an elastic, rubbery sound on the electric bass, you know, almost playing as if it were like like they were giant rubber bands or something. Just a really neat texture to it. And of course, Ralph's playing is wonderful on drums. It composes beautifully too. And Bob Deegan, who I've only heard a little bit of here and there, really nice playing. And I wonder, he's not credited here, but on at least a couple tunes, there's sounds like a string synthesizer, like an Arp Odyssey, kind of laying down this sort of transparent backdrop. It works really nicely with what they're doing, even if it's more like traditional jazz sections, you know, acoustic jazz. Having that in there is really a nice touch. But then actually I'm thinking it could possibly be the engineer here, who I'm sure is familiar to many of you, Connie Plank, which is really neat. I'm not sure how involved he was with the label at all, you know, to what extent. So when I think of him, I think of groups like Cluster, or more electronic, experimental, rather than, you know, acoustic jazz. But who knows? Maybe he was the one who was playing it. But either way, just a really nice album. Goes between a lot of different styles. You know, sometimes almost semi-classical themes. Other times quite Latin. But a lot of times a little bit of tongue-in-cheek with the approach they take. Just little subtle bits here and there. But it's really a lot of fun. Definitely worth hearing. I really like this cover here too, where Gunter is pictured in a different way than the others are pictured. But in a way it could be seen as an illustration of the music itself, and not taking itself too seriously. But yeah, great stuff, and a real nice early example of what was on the label. Now, saving what I think would be for me the best for last, in an album that I've come to, this is going very high up there in my overall list. And yeah, I couldn't recommend this one enough. Ak van Rooyen, who again, mentioning a United Jazz and Rock Ensemble, he was a regular member for many years, and trumpet and flugelhorn player, and joined by wonderful musicians on here. Ferdinand Povel, tenor sax and flute, Yves Albers on guitar, of course Ak himself, Theo de Jong on electric bass, Bart Van Leer trombone, Bruno Castellucci drums, Rob Franken piano, keyboards, and synthesizer. Not a whole lot of synthesizer being played, more little colors and textures, primarily acoustic with a little bit of electric piano, but just absolutely gorgeous compositions and playing. And a special note here is Ak's brother Jerry. Looks like he does the arranging and composes quite a bit of the material. So that's really a standout on here. But the real standout for me is the bass playing of John Clayton, acoustic bass. Just wonderful. Plays on, I think, roughly half the tunes. It goes between, you know, very kind of traditional, I guess you could say like post-bebop, to something almost resembling fusion, but never quite gets there. Really neat. The colors between the instruments and the way they're kind of stretched out and employed is really, you know, very distinctive here. But I think a lot of it has to do with the arranging as well, which I wasn't, before getting this album, I wasn't real familiar with his brother. But you know, again, he plays a large part here. Yeah, the first piece, Eleganza, you know, more of in a traditional mold, kind of bebop-y, but you know, really tight playing between everyone. The second piece, Brass, is just that. It's all brass. Sounds to be overdubbed trumpet and flugelhorn from Ak, as well as Bart's trombone, making this almost ethereal brass choir. I could have listened to that. You know, you could make a whole other album of just that, and it would have been fine. But just wonderfully, just the way it's sort of placed within you know, the whole scope of the album. Tail Spinning is a very kind of hard driving, bop-ish piece, very tight and really nice soloing throughout that. Sunrise Sunset by Yves Albers starts off very beautiful and kind of slow and forlorn, and you know, kind of gradually builds up. Again, the playing between the whole group is really remarkable. Israel, a piece I wasn't as familiar with, Jay Carisi. It sounds to be a standard. I feel like I've heard it before, but they give it a really kind of original treatment here. Now the piece that really does it for me on here is Pisces, which is a Jerry Van Rooyen original. Absolutely gorgeous piece, very lyrical and heartfelt without getting too syrupy. But especially John Clayton's bass playing on here is just, I would almost say it's astonishing at times. Just the range going between arco, the bowed playing, and some of the stuff he's doing, some of his figures while plucking the strings. Just incredible phrase, you know, his phrasing. He has a real singing tone when he's bowing it. But there's also a figure towards the end of the piece where he's going up and down the neck, you know, doing what sounds at first like a traditional bass line, but he's sliding a certain way that almost makes it sound like, I don't know, to me it seems like raindrops in slow motion or something, the way it just kind of goes up and down. It's just incredibly effective, and just the way it kind of lets you down gently, but it's an incredible approach to playing, and it just fits the scope of the group really well. And finally here, the title cut, Ak's own piece, is really neat the way they keep coming back to a theme, kind of a theme and variation, where they take turns, each person takes a turn taking a solo. But just the way it kind of comes back and forth between those is just really very powerful and dynamic. And the only disappointing thing was that the song just kind of trailed off and ended. And I thought, I know people have sometimes talked about albums, like double albums, that seem too long. They say, you know, we should, if this were only a single album, it would have been much better. This would have, you know, this could have easily been a double album. It did end too soon for me personally, because there's just so much wonderful playing and material on here. But yeah, again, I can't recommend this highly enough. Just real beautiful, dynamic, diverse music here, and every player on here is excellent, and every second of every tune is excellent. And yeah, this is probably one of the personally the finest things I've heard on this label in quite a few years of listening. But yeah, definitely recommend checking it out. Akker van Rooyen, Homeward. It's from 1982. Yep, and another great mood record. So yeah, just wanted to share these. Been really getting into them a lot, and I've got a whole stack over here of things from the label I've been going through, and just really enjoying. So yeah, that's been my latest obsession musically, and I'll definitely have more to share, and a few other things mixed in here and there. So I hope we're all well, and appreciate you watching. And yeah, it feels like it's been forever since I've been on, which in a way I guess it's true, but a little out of practice. But it's good to be back. Hopefully doing these more regularly as time allows, and the inspiration's definitely there. So yeah, just gotta stay inspired. So again, thank you all for watching, and from the boys and I, wherever they went, peace, love, and joy.